The National Labor Relations Board this week declined to rule on whether Northwestern University football players are employees and have the right to unionize. That decision slows down what many considered the inevitable path to paying student athletes. Sports Media Associate Professor Galen Clavio is here to discuss what the decision or lack of a decision means for universities in Indiana. Thanks for being here. Many colleges, though, and universities are already extending some perks and benefits, including paying these athletes, right?
Right, yeah, there's some money going to athletes now, particularly in the revenue sports. Cost of attendance monies, in some cases exceeding $4,000 or $5,000. I think Florida State is up to maybe $5,800 for out-of-state students. But it varies from school to school. I think there's some Pac-12 schools that are only about $1,000 or $2,000. So it is happening, though, and it's happening on a much broader level than I think we thought that it would happen. And frankly, that it's happening at all is something that most people wouldn't have predicted even 3-4 years ago.
Is this something, when I heard a year or so ago about Fred Glass at Indiana University talking about it, the ethics or student bill of rights?
Right.
Is that kind of that same thing?
It's in the same vein, yes. And look, I think a lot of this comes down to the original filing by the Northwestern players to try to form a union. And I think that college athletic directors, particularly in the Power 5 conferences, woke up a little bit and said, you know, if we don't get in front of this and start extending some benefits to college athletes, they're going to take that power away from us, Congresses or legislatures or the courts are, and they're going to make it so that we just have to pay them, you know, flat out, like it's going to be basically free agency for college athletes. So what we're seeing now is some incremental steps being taken by athletic departments to try to head that off and try to make it look like they're providing athletes with the compensation that they need.
Well, although I can hear some people now thinking, yeah, but they're getting free scholarships to play at the university, and then of course comes all those shoes and things like that. Isn't that enough? I mean, I guess where's the balance there?
Well, I think the balance comes in a couple of different forms. I mean, first of all, I've never looked at those things as free. I mean, that's compensation for playing what, in the case of football, is a very dangerous sport. And in most cases, whether it's basketball or baseball or whatever, these are sports that require a very high level of skill, and they're sports that universities are making tens, if not hundreds of $millions off of, depending on the school that you're looking at. So, you know, if you look at it from that perspective, there's a balance that has to be struck. And I think that 10, 15 years ago, the revenues weren't quite as high as they are now. Now the revenues are astronomical, whether it's, you know, network television money or Big Ten network money or what have you. That equation's changed. And I think all of this that we're seeing now is athletes and schools saying, okay, the equation has changed. We should probably do something about it.
Now, this case was before the National Labor Relations Board. If they aren't going to decide if students can unionize, then who is? I guess what's next? Right. You know?
The NLRB really didn't want to make a decision on this case. They, in their language, they acted like they wanted no part of making a determination on this, partially because Northwestern's a private school and the majority of schools in college sports are public, but also because I think they would prefer that Congress or the courts make that decision for them. And that's an understandable stance that they would take, because there are implications for this outside of just college athletics. I mean, you're talking about a whole host of potential unionized groups of people across the country that would fit a similar vein as college athletes. So I just think they didn't want to open that can of worms.
You mentioned courts. Are there any cases right now that we should kind of maybe be keeping an eye out
for? Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously the O'Bannon case is the one that's gotten a lot of attention, and that's the one that basically says that college athletes need to be paid for the use of their likeness. The bigger one is the Kessler case, and the Kessler case is being filed or has been filed by the same guy who basically caused NFL free agency as we know it today to happen. And that one is basically advocating for a completely open market for player services, which would entail college athletes being paid in many cases as if they were professionals. So that's the one I think that everybody's really interested in seeing what happens with.
We have 15 seconds. You care to venture a prediction on how this is all going to turn out really quick?
I think that at some point before this is all over, Congress will step in and do something, whether it's give colleges an antitrust exemption or just decide, you know what, this is not a fair labor system. We need to make some changes that are ensconced in law.
All right. Thank you very much for being here. Appreciate it.